Hi, good afternoon or evening or whenever it is that you are watching this. I'm Carol Smith and I'm welcoming you and your student back to school. I'm sorry that we have to do back to school night this way because it's much better to see you and your students in the seats, out there. But during this time we can't, and so we'll just have to make the best of it. So I have a presentation that I have created just to make sure that I remember to say the things that I'm supposed to say. So I will attempt to um, share my screen so that I can show that to you. So present. Okay, here we are. College Prep United States History, our back to school presentation. The best method to contact me is at our email, and all Sonora High teachers have the same email. It's our first initial, our last name, and then that very long sonorahs.k12.ca.us. You can also call the school and leave a message for me. I am working from my classroom, so I will come in and I'll see the red flashing light on my phone, and I can get back to you that way if you prefer. Um, Email is best. I will typically get back to you that day, and depending on when I receive that email, it might be the next day, but it's usually a pretty fast turnaround for the email. My goals for CP US History are that students will be able to evaluate how various historical events that we study have contributed to making the United States what it is today. I want them to be able to consider whether our founding fathers' ideals have been implemented at significant times during our history, or to what extent those American ideals have been implemented. We've already begun to look at those American ideals and to consider, to what extent have we lived up to those ideals. I want them to have a general working knowledge of the significant points of our United States history. The course itself, we start with the founding documents, and we looked at some of the ideals found in the Declaration of Independence. And next week, by the time you're seeing this, we will probably already be working on the Constitution, or maybe have just finished looking at the Constitution. Then we'll jump to Reconstruction, and we make that leap because during 5th and 8th grade, your students, according to California standards, have learned all of the colonies. They've learned about the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812. They've learned about slavery, Manifest Destiny, the Civil War, and Reconstruction. So I'm hoping they remember all that. If not, I should make references enough that they can figure out what we're doing. But I want to revisit Reconstruction because that has laid the foundation for some of the discrimination and the Jim Crow laws that we have had, and the civil rights movements that came in the 1950s and 60s. So, and looking at current events that are happening today. So we'll touch on that again, and then we'll jump to the American industrialization period, and then move pretty chronologically through to the present after that point. The skills that we teach, we will be reading primary and secondary sources in which students need to figure out. Sourcing is when they look at who wrote it, what perspective did they come from, what was their point of view, what was their audience, their purpose, and that sort of thing for both primary and secondary articles. We'll be looking at trying to determine what are the claims and what are the evidences that that author used to convey their point. We'll be looking at making connections between events perhaps during the same time period, maybe across time periods, and certainly from that event to today. What impact has that event had on us today? We'll be looking at cause and effect and change and continuity over time. What has changed? What has stayed the same? We'll be comparing and contrasting different events, and all of that will be using those skills in order to articulate arguments that we may make about claims that we generate about historical events. The curriculum is Teachers Curriculum Institute, called TCI, and that's what we use for our text. The text and the digital notebook are found online. Your student does have a hard copy of the text. It was given to them with the materials pickup at the beginning of the year. But during distance learning, we're mostly using the digital component and the digital notebook for this class. How the students access that, and if you wanted to access it as well, you would go to clever.com and you would enter with your student's email address. Once you arrive there, you will see various icons with different content, different curriculum in it. Clever.com is a platform in which is housed Sonora High's web-based curriculum. So the students only have to remember that one login, clever.com, to get to all of these resources. So once you are there, there's a purple icon called TCI. And once you open that, it will bring you to your student's work, your student's notebook and textbook. So you can peruse that and look and see, what work are they doing? What's the quality of the work? How complete is the work? And you can look at that there. A typical week in CP US history is each day on Zoom, I'm going to present a main idea of a lesson, and I'm going to give them ideas for them to think about as they work through that lesson. I'm going to pull out nuances that they might not find when they're reading the material, and hopefully help to tie things together, maybe explain things that are a little bit more complex. And then they'll be loose to do the reading and the sections that I've assigned for that day. Typically, it'll probably be a couple of sections at a time. And then when we finish the week or the chapter, they will be responsible to do a lesson game, which is still within TCI. It's a great review for the chapter test, and I do expect the lesson game to be done before we take the test because it's a review piece for the test. And then they'll take the test, and those are online tests. I will be mixing this up with other digital assignments, videos, and that sort of thing so that I can try to keep this as engaging as we can during distance learning. All the work will be posted on Google Classroom. At times, there will be assignments that aren't in TCI, but they are on the Google Classroom, and you can check the work there. Again, you'll need your students, if you want to actually look at their work, you will need to log in with the students' credentials to Google Classroom, but then you can look at their work and see how complete it is. Sometimes students are opening an assignment and then clicking submit without having done anything on the assignment, so that then they can show you that it's in the turned in file. But you might want to check if you're suspicious that they might not be doing their work. You might want to actually click on the work and see if it's complete, because we are getting some turned in assignments with nothing done. The grades in this class I have changed from what I usually do to something different during this COVID time. I have reduced quizzes and tests from 50% to 25%. I still want students to be engaged in that testing procedure. I would like to know how they are doing, but I reduced it from 50% to reduce the temptation to teach or to cheat for a grade. So this way, I hope that they are more motivated just to take the test, let me know what they are retaining, what they are not, so that I know what I may need to reteach. They may need to be reminded that they need to study for a test, but tests and quizzes for this semester are worth 25% of the grade. So I've increased the amount that assignments and projects are worth, and that's 65%. So if your student is not getting the work done, it's going to greatly negatively affect his grade, or her grade. So they need to actually access it, get on it, and do it. The final exam is a cumulative final, and that will be worth 10%. And that will have that regardless of whether we're hybrid, 100% back, or whether we are still distance learning. So I hope that addresses most of your questions. If you have others, please email me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much. Good night. Now I have to figure out how to stop recording. And there it is.